Hi everyone, it's Kathy. Thank you for joining me today. I was recently introduced to a company called A Colorful Life Designs by my friend Nancy. She recently posted some projects for her design team projects using the stencils from this company, and they are just really fun stencils. They have a great collection. They're very unique, and they also have some 6x9 stencils, which is fabulous because I really like to use those on my slimline cards. But let's get to these two cards. For the first card, actually for both cards, I used the Butterfly Flight stencil. And I wanted to do a rainbow color scheme because currently I am all about the rainbows. Anyway, I attached the stencil to a piece of Neenah Classic Crest cardstock, and I just used painter's tape because I was, quite frankly, too lazy to go outside and spray it with some pixie spray. But this stencil, it doesn't have so much detail that you have to use pixie spray. Just adhering it with painter's tape or purple tape will be just fine. So the inks that I'll be using for both of my cards are Catherine Pooler's Life of the Party collection. These colors are super bright and super vibrant, and I really, really like them. So I worked my way through the rainbow order, and I started, well, I didn't use the purple, but there wasn't enough room. But I worked my way through the rainbow order, and I started with the blue at the bottom and then just worked my way up through the collection of inks. I do change my ink blending brush in between the green and the yellow, just so I don't contaminate my yellow ink pad, which I almost did. Once I had all of the stenciling done, I did go over the top three colors, which are Tutti Frutti, Tiki Torch, and Tiara. And I'll make sure to have all of the ink colors listed in the description box below, as well as a link over to A Colorful Life Designs website so you can check out some of their stencils. Then I removed the stencil, which is always my favorite part, is that big reveal, and decided to add some splatters on the background. And I did work my way through with each of the ink colors that I used. And after I worked my way through all of those, I decided that I wanted to add some shimmer. So I pulled out my Perfect Pearls and added just a few splatters of that just to get a little bit of a sparkle. I set that panel off to the side, and I have another panel, which is also Neenah Classic Crest cardstock. I treated it with my anti-static powder tool, and then I pressed the VersaMark ink pad through the stencil so the butterflies would show up on the cardstock. Next, I coated it with some clear embossing powder, and apparently I missed a spot with my anti-static powder tool because I had a few strays in the bottom right-hand corner there. And I did have my heat tool heating up off to the side for about 30 seconds to make sure it was nice and hot so that the powder would melt quickly, and then that also helps reduce warping of your paper. So for this panel, I decided, obviously since I did the embossing, that I'm going to do a resist technique. And I'm using the exact same color ink pads as I did for the first card, but I went in the opposite direction. So the first card I started with the blue at the bottom, and for this one I started with the Tutti Frutti at the bottom. For the first layer here of ink on this card, I wasn't trying to get a perfect blend. I just wanted to get a little bit of color down on the cardstock because I am going to come in with one of the 6x9 stencils just to add texture to the background for this card. Once I was done getting that first layer of color down, I did use a dry paper towel just to buff off the embossing powder to remove some of that ink so it would be nice, bright, and white. Then, of course, I had to clean off my mat. Now I bring in a 6x9 stencil, and this one is called 50 Shades. Again, I just used my painter's tape to hold it into place. This is another stencil where pixie spray really isn't necessary, so I just used my painter's tape. And then I just went over this stencil again using the same colors, and I did use a little bit of a heavier hand just to get those polka dots to show up on that background. But I do like that it is a tone-on-tone look, so it's not so in your face. And with the butterflies being embossed in clear powder on white cardstock, the butterflies really stand out. After I was done with adding those polka dots to my card panel, I cleaned off my mat and then used a dry paper towel to buff off the embossing powder again. And there were two spots where the ink was being a little bit stubborn, so I sprayed a tiny little bit of water on my paper towel and just went over those areas, and the ink picked up off of the embossing powder quite nicely. So off screen, I had used my stitched rectangle dies, both STAX 1 and STAX 2 from My Favorite Things, and I cut the panels down. And then I used a slightly larger stitched rectangle die to die cut a piece of black cardstock, just so that there'd be like a very thin border around the edge, because I think that really makes the stenciled panels really pop up off the page. I had also stamped and embossed 2 sentiments from Happy Butterflies stamp set by Catherine Pooler, and I just used my paper trimmer to trim those down into little strips and cut the edge at an angle just using my scissors. I used my tape runner to adhere everything into place, and that's it. That finishes up 2 cards today. Thank you so much for joining me. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you've not yet subscribed, I'd love it if you would. And don't forget to ring the bell so you're notified every time a new video is posted. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.